The Alamo siege lasted for 13 days and was survived only by a few women and children and enslaved peoples. We'll talk about that and more fun Alamo facts as we sketch this little historical uh, place. So let's just turn the page and get started. You ever have one of those days when your words just didn't come to you? That happened to me once. Good morning, good morning, good morning. It is 5:30 in the morning on a Sunday morning. That means it's apple fritter day. 5:30 in the morning on Sunday mornings is when I like to do a little thing where I pull a random object from the Random Object Randomogrifier, a toy from the toy box, and I draw it and we talk about it. And today's random object from the Random Object Randomogrifier is the Alamo. Now, the Alamo. Good morning, Rick. Rick's in the chat this morning. The Alamo wasn't always the Alamo. In 1718, when the Alamo was built, it was the mission de San Antonio de Valero, which means it was a church. And it was not finished. It was just a small little church, and they kept adding to it, and they kept doing stuff, and they kept adding to it. But it was not quite finished. That's a lot. You know what? I think I've already screwed that perspective way up. I turned my book the wrong way and made a mark that I shouldn't have. Let's stop for a second and straighten that out while we still can, before we get too far along. Yeah. That's much better. Anyway, it wasn't finished up until the battle. The battle of San Antonio was in 1850. And it lasted for 13 days. And during the battle, the church wasn't finished. It didn't have the facade on the front. It didn't have the bell towers. It didn't have the dome across the top that we're used to seeing. That gives it that distinctive Alamo shape. It instead just had a square, kind of a square building shape and some unfinished walls. But the army came in about 10 years later and added all of that. So when we see in the movie, we see them fighting at the Alamo, and it's the Alamo that we're used to seeing on the postcards. We know it's not historically accurate because the Alamo wasn't that complete during the battle. Which I think is interesting, because that's an easy thing to have known. You know, when they get something like that wrong, you start to wonder what else they got wrong in the story. Turns out a lot of the story is not what we were told by Disney. I find that shocking. I don't know about the rest of you, but I'm completely shocked that the story told by Disney with Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie is not the historically accurate version. I mean, that's just a complete shock to me. That Disney would edit the story for effect. And give us the impression of the heroism of the men, and get us all chanting, "Remember the Alamo" before we go into battle. Only to find out it just wasn't quite like that. I'm just completely shocked that Disney would do that.
How many other things have they misrepresented to us?
Oh, I mean Mulan, Pocahontas. You know, in the movie, that Pocahontas is like a 17-year-old girl. In reality, Pocahontas was like 12. But you know, they have to make it family friendly. In their eyes, if they don't make it family friendly, you won't take your children to see it.
That's true.
And if you're a Texan, you're not going to take your kids to see a movie about the Alamo where Davy Crockett and Jim Bowie aren't the heroes.
Oh, there's too much history on that.
Way too much history on that. I've got some pencil marks here. I have to. The other day, I did the Capitol building, and it was too short and stubby, and I was overcompensating for that just now. And I can see it in my building. I'm overcompensating for the length, and I really ought to break out a ruler. Right? I really ought to just break out a ruler and get some good measurements, but the other day I made that mistake of making it too short. So today I was trying to make it a little longer, and I can already tell you that I made it too long. And so here we are fixing it already.
That's okay.
Morning, Pamela. You almost forgot. We've only been doing this every day for 400 days, 434 days. Almost forgot. Oh. Remember the Alamo. I almost forgot. I'm sorry, Pamela. I didn't catch the joke in time. I'm sorry. She's sharp. She's so sharp. I walked right into that. I walked right into that. Pamela's in the chat room. Pamela's got jokes. Pamela's got jokes. She's in the chat room. Is Ivy here? Good morning, Ivy. But then I remembered. It took me a minute. Oh my goodness! I can't believe I walked into that so just so plainly. She got me so good. So it didn't start out as the Alamo. It started out as the mission de San Antonio de Valero, and that's a mouthful. But it was the St. Anthony mission, San Antonio de Valero mission in 1718, and then it was that for a while, and then in 1793 it was secularized, is the word they like to use, when it was taken away from the church and given to the military. The Mexican military took it over. You have to keep in mind that in this time period, Texas was still Mexico, because the Alamo is right during the Texan War of Independence from Mexico. And so when the troops were stationed there, I'm not sure there was actually a conflict yet. They may have still been working to combat the Apache at the time. There may not have been an issue with Texians yet. It may have all been conflict with the Apache. The Apache and the Comanche used to pit the Mexican army. Used to make deals with the Mexican army to combat each other. They would say, "Okay, you build a mission, and we'll wait for the other guy to attack it, and then we'll ambush him." And it would happen every time. And they build a mission in the Comanche land, and the Comanche would attack it, and the Apaches will wait and ambush it and kill the Comanches, and then everybody would go home, and then left behind would be a Mexican mission, and Mexico will have advanced to a certain amount into North America and expand Mexico's properties and leave and take from the Comanche or the Apache, and the Apache would help them take away from the Comanche, and the Comanche would help them take away from the Apache. So it's very likely that in 1718, when this mission was built, it was built as part of that conflict and was secularized in 1793 as part of that conflict, and nothing to do with the Texas War of Independence, because the time frame is not quite there. The Texas War of Independence is a touchy subject to begin with, which is why Disney had to soften it a little bit, because in the early 1800s, late 1700s, early 1800s, the states in the United States were passing laws, anti-slavery laws, and Mexico wanted to get people to come live in Mexico, wanted to attract rich plantation owners to come live in Mexico. And they had all this land in Texas, and so they said, come to Texas before your state makes slavery illegal, and you can have your plantation, and you can have your slaves, and everything will be fine. And a lot of plantation owners, including William Travis, moved to Texas, bought land in Mexico, and moved to the newly found Texas. And then when Mexico became its own country, independent from Spain, they decided not to have slavery. They voted against slavery as a country, and they were demanding that all of the slaveholders let their slaves free. And the Texians did not like that, so they decided to secede from the Union. And so that was the core reason behind the Texas Revolution, and the reason the men were at the Alamo fighting. But that didn't have anything to do with why the Alamo was desecularized. The Alamo was likely desecularized because of the ongoing conflict with the Apache. Sam Houston, who was an abolitionist, by the way, he lost the governor's race because he was an abolitionist. Sam Houston had actually ordered the Alamo to be vacated. He told uh, uh, Davy Crockett to abandon, to retrieve the artillery that they could and get the people out of there and abandon it. But when Crockett arrived, he saw the strategic advantage of the location and the fact that they didn't have the oxen to carry all the artillery and families out of there. And so he wrote a letter back to the governor saying, hey, we really need to stay and defend this place. And so he stayed to defend. And when William Travis arrived and assessed the situation, William Travis, the commander, came to the same conclusion. So David Bowie, Jim Bowie, David Crockett, and William Travis, they weren't acting. They weren't just ignoring the order to evacuate. They saw a strategic reason not to. They saw a need that they felt like Sam Houston couldn't see from where he was. And so they petitioned to stay, and that's how they ended up being there when the Mexican armies advanced. So for 13 days, they fought, and the story goes they fought to the last man standing. But that's the account of Joe, who was William Travis's personal servant slave. He wasn't an enslaved man. Joe told the story about how they stayed to the last man. They died fighting. They died with their boots on at the Alamo, fighting down to the last man. But the Mexican army, their journals tell a different story about how when it was obvious that they were going to be overrun, that several people tried to escape out the back and were gunned down. So the story's not quite as clear if you look at and we're not talking about what was popularized. We're talking about men's journals, men's personal documents, men's personal letters home. And some of the Mexican army thought it was distasteful that they were shot in the back in retreat. So it's not cut and dry that who was good and who was evil in that scenario. Certainly not as cut and dry as Disney made it seem. At a certain age in your life, you either become a history buff or you get really into trains. My dad did both. This is my favorite part of the process. I probably never told you guys this before, but this, to me, this is the part of the process that gives the whole thing shape, turns it from just lines on the page to something with depth. And I just love this process. Rick said, after Pamela's joke earlier, Rick said, "See what I have to put up with?" And she does not remember. That's funny. I understand, Rick. As a trophy husband myself, I totally get. Sometimes we just have to. Sometimes we just have to tolerate what our keepers have us do. Dun, 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 dun. Did I ever tell you how much I love this part? How we doing on time? Oh, it's already 5:53. I don't have anywhere to be this morning. I just have to go get donuts after a while. Get to go get donuts. What did we decide? Granny's 93, 94? And I've gotten into the habit of getting her an apple fritter also. And so now I have to go every Sunday because I can't forget her apple fritter.
She will be 93.
She will be 93.
2 weeks.
Two weeks, she will be 93 years old. Does she remember the Alamo? We'll have to ask her. All right. There's not a lot of shading on that, but let me dry it just in case because I don't want it to bleed into the color when we start adding color. So let me dry that real quick. Okay, I flickered out there for a minute. Hopefully I'm back. If you can hear me, are you still there? Okay, I flickered out for a second. That's yeah, that scared me. I flickered out for a second, but hopefully we didn't lose anything. Oh my goodness. That scared me. Thank you. I'm glad we got back online before it cut out. Stream ended. No. That's not it. Are we still going on the vertical? I can see the horizontal, but are we still going on the vertical?
Yes.
Okay, good. We made it back.
I heard the motorcycle. I thought, oh, crap, no.
We made it back in time. Oh, it's worse than that. It stopped broadcasting.
Oh, Lord.
It didn't just go to the Be Right Back window. It stopped broadcasting. I pushed the wrong button. I don't know why I pushed the wrong button. I've only been doing this for 400 days.
You know what surprised me about the Alamo is how small the rooms are.
You know, and it's funny because the whole thing was on 3 acres. Originally, it was a 3-acre project, and the rooms are small, and the scene is small, and what's left of the Alamo is small. But the original Alamo was on 3 acres. It had the church, it had the long barracks, it had work buildings and a corral. But so the original deal was much bigger, and they're building a new facility. They're building a museum that's supposed to be open in 2027. That's supposed to tell more of the story. And they've started a $450 million outreach program to tell more of the story, because the problem is the only story being told is Joe's. Joe was William Travis's slave, and he and some women and children, the enslaved people and the women and children, some of the women and children, not all of the women and children, he and some of the women and children and some of the other enslaved people were allowed to leave. And so he told the story. And in telling the story, he was granted a certain amount of celebrity that he enjoyed. And so it's likely that he embellished the story a bit to get more attention, because the better he told the story and the better he made Jim Bowie and William Travis and Davy Crockett, the better he made them look, the more people wanted to hear the story. And so there's a certain amount of celebrity status that he got from that. But as soon as it started to fade, he and the other enslaved people were promptly re-enslaved and sold back into slavery in the new independent Texas state, in the independent Republic of Texas. So, the only story we've really publicized up until this point is Joe's story, and the recovery of the journals of the Mexican officers, and the story from the other side has never really been publicized. And so Texas is actually making an effort to get that story told as well. And I'm actually kind of proud of them for doing it, because it's hard. You're talking about Texas heroes. You're talking about people that I mean, people name their kids after these people. I can't tell you. There's a popular radio host here in town with a son named Crockett, named after Davy Crockett.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, people name their kids after these people because of how popular their stories were, and the movies. And then I tell you what, let me dry this, and we'll talk about the rest of it while I ink it, because I've got to get the color dry. You know what? Before I do that, I'm going to take just a touch of vermilion. I forgot the vermilion. I got so worried about my stream being cut out. I forgot where I was. I'm going to take just a little bit of vermilion, and I'm going to hit the edges. I'm going to hit the edges of the bricks. Just to give some texture to the facade. Anyway, as I started to say, Phil Collins saw the Disney movie when he was a child, the 1955 Disney movie, Davy Crockett, when he was a child, and he was convinced that he was reincarnated, that he was John Smith reincarnated. John Smith was a courier at the Alamo, and a psychic convinced Phil Collins. Phil Collins, the drummer and lead singer for Journey. A psychic convinced Phil Collins that he was the reincarnation of John Smith, who was a courier at the Alamo, and believing that he was a reincarnation of John Smith, he spent a huge amount of money collecting things like Jim Bowie's knife and Davy Crockett's ammo pouch and other memorabilia from the site. And he jokes about how he spent most of his fortune on this stuff. But then when he became an aging rock star, and he realized that he probably was not a reincarnation of John Smith, and even if he was a reincarnation of John Smith, he still took all of his collection and donated it to the museum in Texas. So let me dry this real quick, and then we can ink it. Camelot said, "Remember the vermilion. Remember the vermilion." In the Battle of San Jacinto, which is where Texas actually won its independence from Mexico against Santa Anna, they were outnumbered 4-1, 2-1. It was either 2-1 or 4-1, depends on who you ask. And the Texians stormed. The Texians and the Tejanos. Tejanos are the Hispanic people who were living in Texas, who wanted to be in the Texas independent, who wanted to be in an independent Texas, and the Texians were the Anglo-Texans. I used to always call them Texicans, but that turns out that's not really the case. Anyway, the Tejanos and the Texians attacked Santa Anna's army while they were having their siesta, their afternoon nap, their afternoon after lunch nap. And they went in with the battle cry of "Remember the Alamo." And that battle lasted 18 minutes. It took the siege of San Antonio, the siege of the Alamo was 13 days. But that the Battle of San Jacinto was 18 minutes because the Texians and the Tejanos were so motivated by the loss and the heroism of the men at the Alamo. But I think it's worth noting that the Mexican army, after defeating the men at the Alamo, let the surviving women and children and enslaved people go. Set them free. I think that's worth noting. That they didn't. The bad guys are not necessarily the evil guys in this story. But anyway, the Alamo gets about 1.6 million visitors every year now. We've been there a couple of times. Once when I was too young to care, and once when we didn't have much time to stay. And I want to go back. And you would think, I only live 3 hours away, you would think it would be an easy feat. But it turns out it's not as easy to find 3 hours. 6 hours travel time to go sightseeing. But I might head out on my motorcycle sometime in the near future and go see it again. Like I said, there's a plan for $400 million outreach push, $450 million they're spending in an outreach for education, updating educational materials to include the story from the Mexican side and from the slave side. Because again, the only story we really know is Joe the enslaved, not our gaming Joe that writes music for Ivy's channel. Okay. I think that's about all the damage I can do to that. I could keep going, but anything else I did do would just be too much. And we're already 10 minutes over on time. What I should do is I should load up on my motorcycle and I should head to San Antonio, and I should take my watercolor sets and I should set up a camera outside there and live stream me watercoloring from the Alamo. But to do that effectively, I need a different camera setup, and that camera setup is about $500 that I don't have. So I can set it up and just show you what I'm painting, or I can just show you what I'm seeing, but I can't show you both. What is today? The 7th of June of 2026. Wouldn't that be fun, Pamela? Pamela said that would be awesome. Wouldn't that be fun? You know, I went down to the USS Texas, which is the battleship Texas. I went down and watercolored there, and I filmed it, but I didn't live stream it. And then I went and I did the Liberty Tree over in Katy, Texas. And again, I filmed it, but I didn't live stream it. I think it would be fun once or twice a month to go find a site like this and live stream it. But you know, that'd be a 4 and 5 hour live stream. I could live stream. Honestly, I could live stream the motorcycle ride. There are people who tune in and watch motorcycles just cruising down the back roads. I could start there. I could live stream for 12 hours. All right, so there is my version of the Alamo compared to the photograph. Let's see it from my perspective. The little bookmark keeps falling in the way, into the path there. See it from my perspective. Get my hand out of the way. Regularly, the live stream 4 hours. The time zips by. Yeah. Ivy live streams 4 hours every Tuesday and Friday. from 1 to 4 Central Time. I think that's right. No, because it's a 4-hour stream. It's noon to 4 Central. It's 1 to 5 Eastern. There we go. There it is from my perspective. And I think the perspective's just a little better this time. So there's what I did today. She says, I don't know how you do it for half an hour. Well, you can see we're already gone long. We're at 45 minutes already. In half an hour, I'm just now saying howdy and getting ready, right? So what are we doing tomorrow? Oh, the suspense. Ooh, the suspense. What could it be? I got to remember I'm not pushing that button. I'm pushing this button. Oh, the suspense. I already know what it is because the ball's clear. I can see what it is. That, and I pulled it out earlier to learn a little bit about it. But tomorrow, thank you, Ivy. Tomorrow, we have, thank you, Pamela. We have a dung beetle. Dung beetles are scarabs. June bugs are scarabs. What makes them a scarab is they have these little fuzzy antennae. Their little antennae have little frills on them. That's what puts them in the scarab family. But this particular scarab is a dung beetle, worshipped by or not worshipped, but representative of one of the gods that the Egyptians worshipped, and imported as a salvation to the Australian cattle market. We'll talk about that and more fun dung beetle facts tomorrow morning at 5:30 a.m. Texas time while we sketch this little pooper scooper. You may want to set your notification bell so you don't miss any of that. I heard my mom laugh at pooper scooper, and that makes the whole day worth it. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. You know I look forward to this every day. This is my favorite time of the day when I get to art with my besties, even if I accidentally try to cut the stream off halfway through. It holds me accountable to my art practice and is often the only, yes, Ivy, those were the beetles in the mummy. Exactly. Except the ones in the mummy were cursed. They were cursed scarabs. They weren't the actual dung beetle scarabs. Anyway, be sure and tune in tomorrow. Same Artistic Biker time, same Artistic Biker channel. And then we dance. We dance until somebody says they see me dancing, because that is how we know that the lag has caught up with the stream and I won't get cut off mid-sentence. Nobody likes being cut off mid-sentence. That's rude. It gives you a chance to say hello and goodbye to each other and ask any question. Pamela says, well, poop. But she didn't say poop. Pamela, we're going to wash your fingers with soap if you keep typing like that. But it gives you a chance to click the clicky thingies this way if you're on the horizontal, or this way if you're on the vertical. But again, the most important part of this is that I don't get cut off mid-sentence, because being cut off mid-sentence is rude. Nobody likes